Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to Keeping It Real on Purpose. I am your host, Edna White, and this space is where we talk real things to real people and we spark real transformation. Today, I'm welcoming back a powerful voice, Justin Marlowe, author of the memoir Perfect Strangers. His book took us deep into what it meant to grow up Black in suburbia, navigating identity, romance, family, and the echoes of civil rights movement. Justin gave us truth, tension, and tenderness in equal measure. But today we're flipping the page and asking where he is now. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you so much, Edna. It's a pleasure to be here. And to kind of pick up on where we left off
Sure.
months ago. So, I had the opportunity to send you a copy, of the project. And so, I'm here to indulge in whatever you want to.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Investigate.
So what have you been up to? I know we had a pre-show talk, but what have you been up to since then?
Like promotion and working on new material for other projects.
Gotcha.
I've delved a little deeper into poetry recently. I've found that that's a good avenue for me to increase my brand, if you will.
Right.
So it's been promo and new creations.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I want to go back to your book, of course, Perfect Strangers. And I know it's deeply rooted in personal memory and collective history. Did revisiting your childhood when you were writing this book through that lens heal something for you, or did it open up new wounds?
The former. It was very cathartic and therapeutic, I would say, to go back into moments that I never really thought that I would ever revisit, So to go back into my 6-year-old self, 7-year-old self, and put myself in those scenarios where, I mean, let's be honest, I can't 100% accurately say what was occurring in 1988, with respect to what I was dealing with. But I can give you insight into my brain at the time.
Right.
So if I could do that, then that's sufficient enough for me to put it on paper,
Right.
So, but doing that a multitude of times, with so many different moments, especially with the moments that sort of when it was okay, how did somebody say this to me, or how did I say it? Trying to be
word it right.
be as accurate as I possibly could. Those were very telling. And I would say were, I guess you could say therapeutic moments within the writing process.
Yeah. Now, how does that translate into the projects that you're doing now? Do you think it's going to open up those very same wounds, or it's going to be doing some healing? How do you see that?
When you mention opening up wounds, I have not found that to be the case.
Okay.
For me, if I open up a wound, quote unquote, then it's a healthy thing for me.
Yes, I got you. Sure.
It's been that way thus far. It's never, it hasn't really been painful. So all of my poetry thus far has been micro nonfiction. So
got you.
It's all true stories with respect to something that I've gone through. But my next, I guess sufficient release is going to be fiction, which is completely, so it's not something where I'm digging into my past. It's purely created by by the brain. And it's different. So it's different. It's a different sort of, I guess, process of analysis.
Yeah.
For me. But it's And it's a little bit harder because I can't just sit and let my fingers flow the same way
No.
I did with fiction.
You have to use that creative muscle.
Yeah, and that creative muscle, it puts me into, I would say, more conundrums during the
Right.
writing process. Because then I'm like,
Yeah.
what to? Because if it's not already written, i.e., like
Right.
not already, it hasn't already happened, then I'm like,
Right.
well, what do I say now? I can say
Right.
whatever I want. It's up to me here.
Right.
And I've attended some pretty solid like writing workshops that have helped
Right.
with
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just different, but I love the entire thing. Like I love everything about it.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
everything about the creating
Hmm.
and letting your own whatever journey you're on, letting
Yeah.
that sort of like sell yourself,
Hmm. Well, that's good. That's really good. I like the fact that you love it. I know delving into the creative side, especially as we as adults, sometimes we're kind of lulled out of that creative space or that imaginative state,
Right.
and we
Yeah.
lose that along the way. So when we're going back to do some of these projects, it's like, oh my gosh, I got to use something I haven't used in years.
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
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 not easy
definitely
to
a
do
challenge.
it, but and
Yes.
that's why when you start to do it, you understand why I'm like, damn, well, that's why like that's why Titanic works or something.
Right.
You know, I'm like somebody made
Exactly.
this, even that's nonfiction as well, but there's like a fictional tale
Right.
associated with. My point
Right.
is though, the intertwining of the
Right.
story. I'm like, this is why this story makes a lot of sense, and this is why people um identify with these characters. Like that's where you can look at those things and then take it back to what
Hmm.
you're doing
Yeah.
and see, okay, what can I do to help myself get to this level?
Right.
Where
Right.
how can I develop um a story where somebody cares as much about said
Hmm.
protagonist as they do about Jack and Rose?
Right, exactly. Yes. Yeah, and that's the challenge. It really is. No matter what you're writing, even if you're writing poetry, it's how can I make if I'm writing about broccoli, how can I make broccoli so exciting that people
Yeah,
are going to want to read it? So it's the same way. It's the same tactic. It's being so very creative around whatever you're doing, and you're gonna love it. Like I know you, if you love being a creator, you're gonna love bringing broccoli or whatever you want to talk about, suburbia, to this beautiful light.
right.
You're gonna love it. You're gonna really love it. So I'm excited about your project that you're moving forward with, because it's never one thing. It's always more,
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
when you're true creative.
it started out as one thing, and then 6 months later, it was something different, and
Always,
then
always.
now, I think I have a good handle on where it is, but then again, I could be incorrect, and it could not
Yes,
be. Until you hit that finish
yes.
line, you don't really know where it's going. So
No,
I'm looking forward to it, and
that's good. Good. That's great. So your book touches. I'm sorry. You wrote about growing up during the aftermath of the civil rights movement, right?
mhm.
How does that experience compare to what you see young Black boys going through today in suburbia in America now?
Well, it depends on the demographic of the suburban audience that you're referring to.
Take where you're from.
Yeah.
Take where you're
So
from right now.
I've seen it in an
Hmm.
almost identical space to what I was growing. Well, I
Gotcha.
shouldn't say identical, but I've seen it in a space where a lot of, especially young, burgeoning black
Hmm.
teens or preteens,
Right.
um, where they kind of feel a little bit of the same sense of confusion that I felt,
Hmm.
because they, even in 2025, they're living in a space where they are the odd person out on a regular basis, and don't really quite know how it connects. I think that some of the differences might lie in the fact that a lot of the parents in this day and age, especially the white parents, are much more in tune with the pulse of society in a current space, and less likely maybe to like alienate some of their African American counterparts.
Gotcha.
I didn't see that when I was a kid at all. When I was a kid, it was a lot of alienation. I'm not even saying that with it seeming as though it was an intent to alienate. I think a lot of people just didn't know what to do because they didn't really have the tools to interact with others who were minorities. So if you have hypothetically speaking, if you had a family gathering, was, let's say it's 1997 and it's mostly white people and 3 black kids, those white people aren't used to being around 3 black kids, so then they don't really know what's okay to say, what's not okay. Or I mean, even when I say okay, I don't mean that to it's a blanket statement. There were a lot of individuals who would say things that were off-putting, not because they were trying to be racist or crude or ignorant, but because they just didn't know.
Right, exactly.
So, when we were going through, well, I say we, like, as a family, when I was a kid and going through situations where, people would say, like, the common thread was, oh, well, you talk like a white guy. So that, though, if you don't know that's a problematic phrase,
right,
then you don't say it with any disdain whatsoever.
Right.
So things like that, you hear them, you heard them all the time, and people don't understand that it's like, oh, damn, I hear that again. Like, it's fucking, like, it's grating at my, they don't know that's the case.
People always said that to me. Are you black? They would ask me a question, like something about music, and I was always a reader. So I think I barely listened to music, barely, and I was a preteen. And it was like, are you black? When I was like, yeah, I would think so. But just because I didn't listen to music and I was reading, that was, the phrase that, are you black?
Yeah, I mean, see, I love music, but it was always a question about taste. So, if I'm listening to like Bone Thugs and Harmony, it's like, okay, that's what we thought you would listen to.
Right, exactly.
But if I turn around and listen to Ace of Base,
listen, all of it has levels. And you know this, Justin. All of it has these levels that, it's crazy. It's like, okay, now we go to, that was the next level. Okay, so now you're listening to, because I would listen to jazz. Like, you never heard of, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. And they were like, well, are you really black? Like, where have you been? Like, and I really can't say anything much more than that. It's like, I've been here.
Yeah,
but this is what I like to listen to,
those questions and critiques were hard for me. For someone else, maybe, I mean, I can't speak for somebody else, but I'm saying that for myself, I really had a hard time making sense of what that meant when
exactly.
Like that. And like I said, it's not as if they're being malicious with malicious intent.
Right. It's just that they that's all they know, and they're like, they're just as confused as we are.
Right.
They're just as confused as we are. So it's like, I'm trying to understand, you look like me, you sort of sound like me, but you don't have these qualifiers, these tick marks,
Right.
And it's difficult for them. And then I guess as you get older, you kind of figure out, okay, you don't have to be this way. The
Yeah, as I
things.
grew up, and I mean,
Yeah.
as high school kind of continued, and I know I didn't cover in the book, but I didn't cover like college or anything like that. But
Right. Right.
I might in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
those are the times when I was really able to say, I don't care what the world thinks, or the world that I don't care where the world wants to place me. I will place myself where I want to be placed.
Yeah.
Which is difficult when you're navigating, adolescence, I guess.
Right. Yeah. For sure. For sure. Because you got to still listen to your parents.
Yeah, and not only that, like you're
you know,
you're-
you still got to listen to your friends. You still got to listen to your teacher. You got all these other things in the middle. So that's a lot going on. So
I think I
listen.
could have cared less about
Okay.
um teacher and like friend interaction back then.
Did you? Okay.
I could
Okay.
have. I didn't. I think I could have.
Yeah. Yeah.
In hindsight, I wish I had been more like I don't give a shit kind of
Right.
attitude.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that's hindsight. And I
Yeah. Yeah.
at like 9, 10, 11 years old, I wasn't really equipped for that.
Yeah.
But I wish I had been,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And which goes right into the question I was going to ask you. So your book touches on a little bit of mental health and the quiet struggles boys face. As a man now, how do you care for your own mental wellness? And what lessons do you wish younger Justin had heard?
um I wish, like I just said, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I had been able to embrace my differences back then,
Right.
as opposed to what I would say was an attempt at assimilation.
Mm.
um I am not an assimilative type of individual, and I think if I had
Mm-hmm.
known that earlier, it would have
Right.
helped me a lot.
Right.
It would
Mm-hmm.
have helped me a lot in school. It probably would have helped me in sports. But
Let's see.
we can't change. I can't change that.
Mm-mm.
So,
Right.
as a piece of analysis, I think about it though. I think
Right.
about
Right.
the fact that I wish that could have happened. I actually
Right.
wrote a poem recently called "A Letter to My Former Self," um,
Mm-hmm.
and
That's good.
it touches on it. Basically, the premise is like embrace the brilliance that you have,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means for you. And when I say you,
Right.
it's me, so it's
Yeah.
about, just embrace it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have those tools, and I didn't really have anyone who was, I guess, like trying to shape that part of who I
Right.
was,
Right.
or
Right.
those parts of who I was. So that's when it takes, these years and years and years, and then we develop into who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I wish I could have embraced those things earlier and embraced the idiosyncrasies that I would say are odd about myself.
Right.
I wish I had embraced them and let them be free, as opposed to trying to contain them.
Right. It's a hard job. It's a really hard job.
Yeah,
Do
it's
you
almost
think?
impossible. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's not almost. It's possible. It's impossible. It comes out somewhere. But do you
yeah.
think we ever stop being shaped by our teenage friendships? I know you talk about that. Do you think we ever stop being shaped by our teenage friendships, or does the early relationship still whisper through the choices we make today?
That's a really interesting question. I guess it depends on the person. I mean, I have become, in my adult life, I've become much more of a loner than I used to be as a
Gotcha.
teen. So
Mm-hmm.
the goals, like the friendship goals I had, the relationship goals I had
Right.
as a teen,
Mm-hmm.
are almost like non-existent in terms of how I operate today.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the teenage me is kind of gone.
Gotcha.
But I can't say that definitively with respect to other people. That's just who I am. I've learned that I work better in isolation. When I'm by myself, I find myself having heightened levels of peace. I don't want to give that up. So but the teenage me wasn't like that.
Right. Okay.
The teenage me wanted to have 10 friends that I could call Friday night and say like, "Hey guys, what are you up to? What are you doing?" The new me doesn't care at all about that.
Right.
So
do you think your spirit has grown up from that point? You've learned some, because we all have those spirits that maybe our teenager hasn't grown up, and we have to be a parent to that child. Do you think you've grown your teenager up enough that you can work alone now? Per se.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the term is like growing up. I would say it's just like an evolution of my personal, for me as a person.
Right.
Because if somebody still wants to live that life, that's cool. Like that's not bad.
Right.
I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. And if I were to stay like that, that would be fine. It just isn't me anymore.
But you're more evolving right now, and that teenagers has evolved with you.
Yeah, and it's not even a teenage. That's like more like my 20s and even in my 30s.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
I was a social butterfly. Now I sit at home and I watch movies and write.
Well, that's a different. Well, let's just say that's different, because when you get into that mode and your creative side is really working with your spiritual side, it's that's a whole different area. You have to have that solitude. That solitude is so very necessary.
Yeah, it's like you can't get out of it sometimes.
No, you can't. So you just stay there and create. It'll let you know when it's over.
Right. Yeah, I'm okay with that though.
Yes, absolutely. So give us some stats on what Perfect Strangers, what you've done, as far as, how many podcasts you've been on, how many sales, how far your sales has gone up, I know you have other endeavors, and tell us about, your new podcast that you're just embarking on. We'd love to hear it.
Well, let me think. How many podcasts have I been on since I started? Well, this is the second one with you. So
right. You've been on more.
No, I know. What I'm saying, like, it's 2 with you. I've probably been on about 8 to 9 podcasts. I have another one.
I would think more. But okay.
You could be correct. I don't want to like overshoot.
I've been watching you. I think you've been on more.
I have one coming up in an hour and a half tonight, actually.
Okay. So yeah, you're doing well. You're doing well, and they're very, they're very meaty. You give a lot of information, which is great. It's really great.
I'm glad you think that.
Yeah, you do.
So yeah, I mean, I'm continuing to move in that direction. Just kind of like trying to continue moving, increasing my media portfolio.
Gotcha.
Get out there. I speak to as many people as I possibly can. Make connections with great people like yourself. Who are doing their thing, moving and shaking, moving up the social ladder, the media ladder.
Thank you.
I've got an appearance in Texas coming up in the fall for Perfect Strangers.
Right.
And continuing, like I said earlier, to just continue the proliferation of the media portfolio.
Right.
Writing poetry. My next more significant project is a novella called The Overlord, which is about it's a science fiction tale about Sierra Leone in the late 18th century.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really trying to push that to agents. I've got a few leads already.
Okay.
Yeah, that's next up.
Awesome.
So, just keeping the creative bones and the creative muscles and juices flowing. I never want to stop that. It's difficult because in this field, sometimes the slightest rejection can make you feel like your world is over. And I mean,
it's true.
yeah,
It's true. No, you're right. You're very true. It's very true.
There was a time, I think it was like last week, when I went from a period where there was an agent that I'd reached out to was like, "Hey, I love this idea. I want to hear more." The next day, a different agent said, "Thank you for your submission. I don't want to read this further at all." And
and they said those words. Oh my gosh.
And I was like,
yeah, cut me. Yeah, it's cut my. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was really bad.
Fuck, man. Like, I was like, I guess I suck at writing, and I guess this whole thing is just stupid, and no one's gonna like me.
And never mind the other person that said I would love to hear everything about your. Never mind that person.
It was. I was totally dejected.
Yes.
Then I like I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, you know what? Some people won't even read past the fact that you said this is a novella, not a novel. So she could have easily been like, that word alone could have made her say, nope.
Yeah, no.
There's 1,000 things that could happen that, and I was like, you know what? You need to stop acting like this. And, like just relish.
You know how many no's I had? You're just starting. How many no's I received? Oh my gosh. I've got rejected by Billy Graham's library. Okay. I was rejected by them. That cut my whole soul. I was like, it really cut my whole soul. I couldn't believe it. I was like, Billy Graham said no to me. It was like really bad. Yeah.
I had a nomination, like the Perfect Strangers book was nominated for best nonfiction piece in Virginia by the Library of Virginia.
Okay.
But it was nominated by a reader. So someone submitted it as like a nomination. Right. And so then it was like, well, we'll let you know the beginning of summer if you qualify for our final gala in September. And so every day I'm like, I didn't get another. The
nomination, Justin, just the fact that you were nominated can be like a just like a push forward. Like just the fact you're nominated.
You're not wrong.
They give you that's great. Like someone who read your book nominated you. That's so cool.
But if I don't make the finals, then I'm gonna be mad about it.
No. You can't be mad, Justin. Just think about that. Somebody who read your book nominated you. You didn't do it. They did it. That's great.
Well, terrific. You're right. I'm just saying how I think about it. So
I know you're
if I don't get a letter in the next 3 weeks saying that it's been a finalist, then I'm gonna be like, screw the Virginia Library.
I know. That's what I said about
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I know. It does bother you when you're, but I just lean on with all the no's that I've ever had, I just lean on, okay, that wasn't for them. This is for maybe someone else. And then when I start getting the yeses, I was like, okay. So you get them, just keep plugging away. As my mom said, the more you do, the more outcome you get. So,
yeah, that's very true. Very true.
Yeah, you get that. So, Justin, thank you for not just writing Perfect Strangers, but for living its message and then showing us what comes after the last page. This episode reminds us, audience, that healing is layered, identity evolves, and revisiting the past can be the very act that frees us into the future. To our listeners, if you haven't yet grabbed a copy of Perfect Strangers, it's more than a memoir, it's a mirror from your memories to your mindset and for humanity, all of suburbia. So follow Justin to stay in touch with what's next, because I know he's on Instagram. That's where I follow him. And because something tells me the best is yet to come. As always, I'm Edna White, and this is Keeping It Real on Purpose, and my esteemed guest, Justin Marlowe. We're saying bye for now. Keep showing up and keep being real. Bye for now.